Around 20,000 Russian soldiers killed in action in the Kharkiv offensive. Spain to deliver an additional battery of the Hawk anti-aircraft system to Ukraine.
Yeah, baby!
The Summer Olympic Games 2024 officially begins in Paris today. This year, Ukraine will be represented by 140 athletes.
There will be a victory for Ukraine, and everything will be fine.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kasoy, and this is United 24 Media. Ukrainian defense forces have struck a rare Russian counter-battery radar, the Yastreb AV, behind enemy lines in the Donetsk direction. This video was recorded by the 14th Regiment of Unmanned Aviation Systems, identifiable by their emblems. The footage of the radar being struck by HIMARS was shared by Andriy Yermak, the head of the president's office, on social media. Ukrainian soldiers shot down a Russian Su-25 combat aircraft in the sky over the Donetsk region. It was paired with another attack aircraft, both trying to fire at the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces in the Pokrovsk direction. The plane was destroyed by anti-aircraft gunners from the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade. This month, it is the second Su-25 attack aircraft they have destroyed. Liberating Crimea is realistic. Alexander Syrsky, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, expressed confidence in the possibility of reclaiming the temporarily occupied Ukrainian peninsula. In an interview with The Guardian, he emphasized that a primary objective for Ukraine is the destruction of the Crimean Kerch Bridge, which links Crimea with Russia. He also told journalists that sea drones have sunk roughly a third of Russia's Black Sea naval fleet. Additionally, Ukraine's armed forces have been successfully deploying long-range attack drones to strike deep inside Russia, targeting about 200 critical infrastructure sites related to military logistics. These include factories, fuel depots, and munition warehouses. Meanwhile, Russian forces have increased the number of barges positioned around the Kerch Bridge to reinforce protection, reports an analyst at the American Enterprise Institute, Brady Afric. He posted on X that the latest imagery of the bridge shows the presence of more than 30 barges. Russia continues to add them to act as barriers against Ukraine's naval drones. Ahmedid Children's Hospital has announced a tender to repair the facade and interior of the medical facility, which was damaged by Russians on attack on July 8th. The project will be implemented on a design-build basis, meaning that the contractor will design and execute the construction work. 15-year-old Kharkiv resident Artur was undergoing treatment when Russia attacked the hospital with a Kh-101 cruise missile. His story in our latest report.
When we got to the elevator, there was smoke everywhere and the elevators were not working. All the staff were with us, the nurses and the head of the department. They told us to go down to the first floor, to the shelter. So my son and I started going down from the 8th floor to the first, step by step.
This is how Kharkiv resident Julia recalls the 8th of July. On that day, she and her son were in Ukraine's main children's hospital, Ohmedid, in Kiev.
There were mothers there with small children, with babies. Of course, it was a massive shock, just shock, to experience it for the second time.
Exactly 2 months earlier, on the 8th of May, Russian troops attacked a school sports ground in Kharkiv. Her son and 2 of his classmates were on the pitch playing football at the time.
My name is Artur Petrushin and I'm 15 years old. And because of the aggressor who attacked us, I lost my foot. I was walking with 2 of my classmates. We heard an explosion. It was somewhere in the sky. A minute later, something flew into the sports ground. A piece of shrapnel hit me in the head, on the right side here, in the back. It shot through me and out my shoulder, breaking 2 ribs, and my shoulder blade too. And of course, my leg.
Artur says he was conscious the entire time and he felt no pain. He then underwent 8 hours of surgery followed by treatment in various hospitals in Kharkiv. After the amputation, he began rehabilitation at Ohmedid. The day when Russian forces attacked the hospital with a Ha-101 missile was the same day the doctors were supposed to remove his stitches.
To be honest, I had never heard such a whistling sound before. It was very scary. We were sitting in the corridor. A second after we heard the whistle, a second before the explosion, the light had just been turned off and we were thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen now?
They stayed in the hospital's shelter until the evening, and the next day Artur and his mom returned to Kharkiv, where he finally had his stitches removed. Prosthesis came next.
As it turns out, my Artur will be the first child to receive prosthesis in Kharkiv. just like that. Usually, everyone goes to Lviv or Kyiv, but we were the first to be taken care of like this, and the prosthesis will be fitted here.
Julia says that the first thing Artur asked the doctors after the news of his amputation was for a video to understand what the prosthesis would look like. Artur adds that his biggest dream now is to get a prosthesis before his mother's birthday in September.
At home, I lift my leg, bend my knee, do push-ups, sit-ups, and work out with dumbbells. My friends tell me that if something like this had happened to them, they would have given up by now. But I'm basically holding on. It's not that I don't care about the injury, but I do a little bit.
Now Julia spends all her time with her son. She says they started going for walks and exercising together to help Artur recover faster. But their favorite activity is watching a movie together in the evening.
What is our favorite movie?
Transformers.
Transformers, all of them.
It's a pity what I've lost, but to be honest, the main thing is that I'm alive. I don't need anything else.
Around 20,000 of Russia's military personnel had been killed in action during its spring offensive in Kharkiv, stated President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. In an interview with the BBC, he pointed out the failure of Russia's offensive in the Kharkiv region, which started on the 10th of May, with their deepest incursion reaching 10 kilometers from the border.
Russia did indeed launch an offensive on Kharkiv. Its goal was to occupy a city of 1.5 million people. It's a really big city, very big. Look, 1.5 million people, even at a time when the border with Russia is very close, bombs and even artillery are flying in. But we stopped this offensive. Their offensive failed. This is a fact.
Ukrainian paratroopers managed to stop one of the biggest Russian offensives since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. As reported in the official Telegram channel of the 79th Brigade, the Russians employed 11 tanks, 45 armored infantry carrying vehicles, 1 Terminator, which is a tank support fighting vehicle, as well as 12 so-called racers, utilizing regular motorbikes. The air reconnaissance spotted the incoming convoy, and the artillery rained fire. As a result, the Russians lost all 12 motorcycles. 6 tanks were damaged, as well as 7 IFVs alongside their landing infantry party. Russia still does not allow United Nations representatives to visit the site of the Olenivka prison massacre, which occurred on July 29, 2022, stated the UN press service. Back then, at least 50 Ukrainian prisoners of war were killed, and another 151 were injured. The detention facility in the Donetsk region was under Russian control and housed Ukrainian soldiers, in particular, those who had defended Mariupol. After the attack, marked by a powerful explosion, Russian authorities immediately blamed Ukraine for the strike using HIMARS rockets. Ukraine asserts that Russia orchestrated the explosion to cover up war crimes and atrocities committed against the prisoners. The bodies of Ukrainian prisoners of war are being returned to Ukraine without their internal organs, suggesting that they could have been used for organ transplants in Russia. As reported by the wife of one of the victims, not only do they torture Ukrainian captives, but they also return their bodies to the families with missing organs. According to Ukrinform media, she stated this during a meeting in Ankara between representatives of the families of prisoners of war and the ambassador of Ukraine to Turkey, Vasil Bodnar. Throughout July and August, Ukraine will receive 100,000 rounds of ammunition through the Czech Ammunition Initiative. These deliveries will accelerate in September, said Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky. He mentioned that Prague is looking for money to buy more ammunition so that the initiative can continue in 2025. In February 2024, the Czech Republic announced to supply the Ukrainian armed forces with 50,000 to 100,000 large-caliber shells monthly. The ammunition initiative looks for artillery ammunition for Ukraine in countries outside the European Union. And the Ministry of Defense of the Czech Republic is preparing to launch a second initiative to supply Ukraine with artillery ammunition in 2025, reported the Defense Minister Jana Černokova. This time, Czech manufacturers will participate in this initiative. The Ukrainian military destroyed a Russian Tor air defense system, hidden in the village of Olenivka in the Donetsk region. Through drone reconnaissance, the scouts of the 79th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade spotted the system near the Donbass Arena in Donetsk. They then tracked the complex to its concealed location. Ukrainian forces targeted it with a GMLRS missile fired from a US-supplied HIMARS launcher. The US President Joe Biden addressed the nation from the Oval Office, emphasizing the critical importance of this election and the need to safeguard democratic values. He expressed gratitude for Vice President Kamala Harris, whom he endorsed as the new presidential candidate. In his speech, Biden also reaffirmed his commitment to supporting Ukraine.
I will keep working to ensure America remains strong and secure and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger.
Earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid tribute to US President Joe Biden after he decided to end his re-election campaign. On his official X page, he wrote that in recent years, many strong decisions had been made, and they will be remembered as bold steps taken by President Biden in response to challenging times. Zelensky expressed his gratitude for Biden's work, which played a significant part in stopping Russia from occupying Ukraine. The offices of the Swiss Foundation for Mine Action was damaged in Kharkiv after a Russian rocket attacked the city. FSD is a humanitarian nonprofit organization based in Geneva. It conducts demining operations in over 30 countries. In Ukraine, its staff members are deployed in the Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Donetsk regions. According to the Kharkiv prosecutor's office, several floors of the building were destroyed, and 6 of the foundation's vehicles were damaged.
I
am demining agricultural land. We are not a military organization. We have nothing to do with the military. It is terrible what happened. This is no different to when they attack schools or museums. Russians do not care about science, culture, or anything that helps people.
Romania has deployed 2 F-16 aircraft in response to the attack by Russian drones on Ukrainian ports on the Danube River, which are separated from Romanian territory in some places by only a narrow riverbed. The Romanian Ministry of Defense sent a team to the village of Plaru, on the opposite side of the Danube near Izmail, to search for fragments of downed drones that could potentially have fallen on Romanian territory. The following day, the country's foreign minister confirmed that the remains of Russian drones were found on the territory of Romania. She stated that Bucharest has informed its allies, and they are coordinating on the matter. Spain will deliver an additional battery of the Hawk anti-aircraft missile system to Ukraine. It is scheduled for September, says the Minister of Defense of Spain, Margarita Robles. During a video conference with her Ukrainian counterpart, Rustem Umerov, she announced the upcoming shipment, which will increase the air defense capacity of the Ukrainian armed forces. Robles also spoke of the 5,000 Ukrainian soldiers who are training in Spain and about the progress they are making.
Yeah, baby!
The new Estonian Prime Minister promised that the country will support Ukraine until the victory, continuing the path of the previous government. In an interview, Kristen McCall, who has replaced Kaja Kallas, told journalists that Estonia is well defended and it will only increase its defense expenditure.
We will be with close cooperation with our allies in NATO, also with Ukraine. We will support Ukraine with 0.25% of our GDP. This commitment will remain, which comes from the previous government. We will support Ukraine until the victory of Ukraine in this war. And we are in this for a long term. I hope our allies are too.
Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs Dmytro Kuleba visited China this week. This marks the first visit to the country by a high-ranking Ukrainian official since Russia's full-scale invasion. In particular, Ukraine's foreign minister met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Guangzhou. According to the press service of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, the main topic of discussion was the search for ways to stop Russian aggression, as well as China's possible role in achieving a just and lasting peace.
My Chinese colleague clearly stated that he agrees that what is needed is not an illusion of peace, but a just and lasting peace. That is what we need to strive for. In other words, there is no need to strive for some temporary solutions. I certainly informed him about the peace formula, the peace summit, and our next steps. I emphasized 2 principles that must be steadfastly upheld. First, no agreements about Ukraine without Ukraine. Second, as I have already mentioned, full respect for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The Summer Olympic Games 2024 officially begins in Paris today. For the first time in history, the opening ceremony won't be held in a stadium. Instead, it will be paraded across the city. 205 teams will sail on 96 ships along the River Seine. through the city center to the Eiffel Tower, covering a distance of 6 kilometers. This year, Ukraine will be represented by 140 athletes.
Greco-Roman wrestler Parviz Nasibov, a silver medalist at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, walks across the platform of Kyiv railway station with his 2-month-old son in his arms. His family is seeing Parviz off to the Olympic Games in Paris.
This is a big responsibility because of what is happening in my country, where I live, where my son is growing up. I worry a lot. I have pledged to do everything to make my country and my son proud.
This year, 140 athletes across 23 sporting disciplines will be competing for Ukraine at the Olympic Games. This is the lowest number of athletes to represent Ukraine in the history of the competition.
I am leaving for Paris and my family will remain here. Of course, I can't fully concentrate. You keep thinking about whether everything will be all right and if a missile, like the one that hit the children's hospital, could hit our home. Of course it's hard. Hard to train, hard to compete. But it's possible that thinking about everything happening in our country, this dreadful war, might even help me. It means I have to give everything I've got.
The journey to the French capital for Ukrainian competitors begins in a special Olympic carriage on the train. On the platform, family and friends gather to cheer on their athletes.
My brother and his brother-in-arms root for me and our team. I think all the athletes who put in good performances will give them extra motivation. They will see that what they are doing, defending our country, is not in vain. They are enabling us to represent our country at the highest level. There will be a victory for Ukraine, and everything will be fine.
Fans are already waiting for the Ukrainian athletes near the Olympic Village. The sportsmen and sportswomen assure they will make every effort to ensure that Ukraine shows the world its best.
I believe that our goal is to show the world that we are fighting on all fronts, not only in a war, but also in sports. Despite difficult conditions, we continue to win first places.
I want to show the whole world that Ukraine is unbreakable, and even in such circumstances, we are able to win awards. I will do my best.
The United Kingdom is commemorating Ukrainian athletes who have been killed since the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion. An installation was set up in London's Parliament Square. In the center of the exposition, the number 487, representing the estimated number of Ukrainian athletes who have lost their lives in the war as early as July 2024. Surrounding the display are various sporting items associated with each athlete. This is it for today. We are United 24 Media. Thank you for being with us, and see you next week.